Hello and welcome to Crucible of Words for more Legacy action. Today, at the request of a friend and donor to the channel, we are playing some Sultai Tempo Reanimator. So my friend managed a 5-0 with this the other day, and they wanted to put it on the channel, so here we are. So obviously Blue-Black Reanimator, as it once was, is gone. There's no Entomb, so in order to try and make a similar play pattern, we have to do some pretty weird things, and that weird thing is Worldly Tutor. So this is a really interesting card in this list because it allows us to search our library for a creature card and put it on top. So this can find us one of our big monsters, which we can then put into the graveyard using our Surveil lands, although we can also do it the other way around, where we put a Surveil trigger on the stack and then cast a Worldly Tutor. So a bit like where you do the Brainstorm trick, but we have Surveil lands that can come up with this to put a creature in the graveyard. But not only does it find us the big monsters, it also finds us a reanimation spell in the form of Metamorphosis Fanatic. So this is a card we can miracle for 2 mana, and it comes back and resurrects a creature from your graveyard and gives it lifelink, which is pretty darn cool. But beyond that, it also does a few other interesting things here. It can get us more lands by getting a Generous Ent. It can also find us a Brazen Borrower if we need a specific answer to something as well. Now, Worldly Tutor is an underrated card, really, because it is card disadvantage most of the time. Like if we're trying to put it into the graveyard with a Surveil land, then sure. But generally, if we're just spending a card from our hand to put a card on top of our library, we go down a card, which can then compound itself with things like Force of Will and Force of Negation. So this is a much fairer power level than something like an Entomb. The rest of this deck is pretty familiar, to be honest. We got our Thoughtseizes, Brainstorm, Ponder. We got Tamiyo, obviously. Some Dazes to back up our other counter spells, and a Murktide Regent as another top-end finisher. So it is trying to be a successor to what the Blue-Black Reanimator deck was, but we're having to jump through more hoops, and maybe this is going to be a fairer power level. I have seen a few people toying around with similar things to this as well. We do have access to 4 Wastelands, and our mana base needs to have some forests in, so we can tutor them with the Generous Ent. So we've got ourselves the Tropical Island, the Bayou, and the Hedge Maze, and these also help us cast our Worldly Tutor, obviously. Out of the sideboard, we do get another interesting thing that we get to reach for, which is Collector Ouphe. This is kind of a big deal that we can Worldly Tutor for this, because this is obviously going to be exceptionally good in certain matchups. I wonder if we're even supposed to go slightly deeper into this package of like one-offs, maybe. We'll play the deck and see how it feels. We also have the Duke as well, so we've got the Dauthi Voidwalkers, Barrowgoyfs, and then we have access to some removal in the form of Bitter Triumph, Fatal Push, and Shoulder's Edict. This is the one difference to the list they 5-0'd with. They wanted me to swap out the Dismember here for a Shoulder's Edict, which makes sense to me. And then we've got some more counters in Consign and Force of Negation. So we've got a decent package of things we can bring in against the colorless Forge decks. And that, lovely people, is what we're playing today. You thought that Blue-Black Tempo Reanimator was gone. It's just worse. And maybe this deck has some legs, but we're going to find out. I know a lot of people have been trying it, and it hasn't been putting up that much in terms of numbers. So let's see why that might be the case. Alright, remember to like and subscribe, and if you can support me on Patreon or becoming a YouTube member and seeing my videos early for just $1 a month, why not do that? It barely costs you anything, but it helps me out. Alright, let's get stuck in. If you've been watching my content and thinking, I'd like to play some Legacy too, then check out 3for1 Trading, one of Europe's leading Magic the Gathering retailers. They have weekly offers and upload new cards every Wednesday. And it's not just Legacy stuff they sell. They have a beautiful selection of vintage and old school cards too. Support from sponsors like 3for1 Trading make it possible for me to put out videos and help keep Legacy alive, so why not give them some love? Click their link in the description below and use my code COW3 to enjoy free worldwide shipping on your first order over €500. Our first opening hand is Tamiyo into Brainstorm, so we're going to snap that one up and keep it. We have a Surveil land, so we might even be able to put a big monster in the graveyard at some point. Here comes everyone's favourite Tamiyo. I'd rather not Force of Negation to protect this Tamiyo, like in terms of if they try and answer it on their turn, but we'll see what they do. Eumidian Hatchery, so probably going to be doing some sort of pox stuff over there. Tamiyo, pretty good against Hatchery. I'm not going to counter a Mox Diamond. I will counter a Smallpox, I think. Tamiyo is just so good against Pox decks. Thoughtseize. Okay, so we're going to lose the Brainstorm here. Then we get to make some decisions next turn, depending on what we draw. Archon of Cruelty. You are not really what I wanted to draw. Although, if they cast Smallpox, they do help us out getting this out of our hand. So we can Wasteland the Hatchery, or we can just try and draw some clues. I think we need to draw some more cards here. I think I'm going to play the Wasteland out. This gives us the option of wasting an Urza Saga before it makes mana. Another Hatchery. Now the plan is Tamiyo deals with Hatchery when it flips. We're casting a smallpox here. We are casting a smallpox. I'm going to crack this clue. It's a ponder. We can answer this. I think we're going to. As much as I would like to put Archon of Cruelty away, right now this whole game is about Tamiyo. Please Thoughtseize me, opponent. That would be delightful. I think they would have Thoughtseized first, though, if they had it. Reanimate. We could play this Undercity Sewers and try and spike a land, spike an Atraxa. I think that's worth doing here. We still have another Surveil land available via this Verdant Catacombs. Generous Ent. That can go into our graveyard. I think we attack. I think I'd rather just get a big monster into play. We're amassing all of the clues here. Clues and food. What's the other one? Treasure, I think. Sort of the standard tokens that are in everything these days. So this insulates us from a smallpox. We can choose which of our creatures goes away. No to the Ezra Saga before it learns to make mana. This could be... I have seen some smallpox builds that have access to a couple of crop rotations. Alright, we get smallpoxed again. 3 mana. It's a grist. Okay, they can make a guy, but they kind of have to chump block with this guy. Thoughtseize. I think step 1 is Generous Ent comes in at grist, and then Tamiyo just does a regular attack. We have many options available to us this turn. If they have another grist, they could just let the grist die here and then just have a removal spell on our whatever creature needs to be removed in their eyes. I think I want to Thoughtseize my opponent. Let's see what they want to do with these blocks. Yep, they're blocking the Generous Ent. So I could draw a card and then Thoughtseize, or I could Thoughtseize and then hold up potential Surveil value. I don't really want to expose our only green source to a Wasteland. So if we just hold this back... So if we play this but we don't crack it, then we just Thoughtseize now, and then we can crack the clue. I think that's what we're going to do, just to keep our green source safe. Okay, just a Stinky Mox Diamond. And no Wasteland over there. It's just the Underground Mortuary. We're obviously quite far ahead. They have some pretty banger draws, though. Getting this Humidin Hatchery to do its thing. Also like how the food can kind of offset the life loss from Reanimate a little bit. Some really cool deck building in this deck. They left a card on top. And they're going to mill it over. Is it another grist? No, it's an Orcish Bowmasters. Interesting they chose to mill and then... to do the Surveil land, then mill. They kind of just didn't get any value. I'm going to crack a clue right now. And we will go and get... I think it's Tropical Island here. I think post-board, we probably get a Bayou in that situation, because post-board they could have a choke. But for now, I think it's better just to do it this way. So I'm going to have that main deck. Alright, got a little bit more installation here. Attack grist with a bunch of things. And a chomp block again. We're not really worried about the ultimate of this grist. It's not going to do enough. We could have obviously used the Thoughtseize Ada on ourselves if we wanted to, but I'm not really about that. I think we're going to leave up black rather than green here. If we find another land, we get to crack this other clue and grab a Planeswalker. We didn't get that. But we still have this Daze, which is probably just going into the Force of Will, to be honest. Well, we found something, or they're just charging up their lasers. Their bug laser. Okay, so next turn, we can bounce the token and kill the grist with the Generous Ent. Actually, no, we can't, because it's going to go up to 6, right? That's kind of annoying. A Wasteland. They can take our only green source. We don't necessarily need that to win this game, though. Goodbye, Tropical Island. They could have used that to get a bunch of bugs, and they decided not to. If we've got this Brazen Borrower turn earlier, if we can actually kill the grist, that would have been helpful. Ooh, an Abrupt Decay. Well, it can't be counted. So we might be on bounce the grist, counter on the way back down, and just let Generous Ent lead us to victory. Ponder. We could ponder first, but if we miss on land, that's really bad news for us. Let's go to attacks. Attack their face. And see if they still want to block or not. They might not block because they might think their grist is going to be able to minus and fire the token at us. Right, they're just taking the block. Let's get rid of the grist. This does tell our opponent that we definitely have a counterspell. Stacking up their hatcheries. Nile Spellbomb. That's certainly not what we're fighting over here. They're taking so much damage from their own lands as well. The most obvious Force of Will I've ever seen. I guess we could Daze this. I wasn't expecting to get used to have this Daze, but here we are. I'm going to bounce the Underground Sea so we can still crack a clue next turn. So he gets to tap one more Humidin Hatchery. Seems like a rough spot for our opponent. Worldly Tutor. Not particularly useful right now. Going to put our opponent to 2. These 2 minion hatcheries looking pretty suspect. We already have a blue card for our Force of Will. We just need to counter one thing our opponent has. Now, they could have 2 things if they crack the Spell Bomb, but are they going to have the mana to cast something and crack the Spell Bomb and then cast something else? I doubt it. They're cracking a Spell Bomb. What do you use here? A hatchery. They're going to 1. You got it. They could play an Orcish Bowmasters, but we can cover that with the Force of Will. Wasteland is probably their best draw. So they can Wasteland their thing and just have a million blockers forever, and that's really annoying. We can grind through that. It should take a little while. If they play anything worth countering, we're going to crack the clue first, because I'd rather pitch something that isn't Pondo if we can help it. Alright, our opponent scooped it up. What are we doing against Pox? It's an interesting one. Let's move some of these around. I think this is definitely a spot for Dauthi Voidwalker. That seems like a given. Shoulder's Edict can blow up Hogak. It can blow up Planeswalkers. That seems pretty good. This can also do the same. Fatal Push is good for the Orcish Bowmasters. Collector Ouphe definitely has some text here. So the question is, how much do we think we can rely on our graveyard? So, like, this is our package. Like, our mana base also gets worse because of these Worldly Tutors. We could, like, do this as our, like, pivot. Completely off of... this. I'm not really in love with the Dazes, though. We can have a couple of Consigns for their Umedian Hatchery triggers, and also for, like, as a Saga trigger, and it's still a blue card and pitches to Force. Do I want this Daze? Probably not. Do I want a third Consign or a Force? It's probably just a Force, and we're just going to beat our opponent down whilst they're messing around with our graveyard. Also, by basically taking out all the green cards, we make our mana base better because we're not really fetching green. I said it makes our mana base better, and then immediately is not the case. I do like a Brainstorm, and the Wasteland covers as a Saga, which is one of the scarier things. Okay, I'm going to keep this. If we draw a black source, then we can just lead off on Bayou and then have that going on turn 2. And we can shut down any loam shenanigans. Consign to memory. I think we're just going to do some Hedge Maze stuff. There is an option to just Wasteland this and give them a 1-1. Alright, I would like that swamp. They're just going to be pumping up their hatchery and they're not going to be doing anything with it just yet. They got a fetch land here, so they have access to greens. They can start doing loam stuff. They could also smallpox us this turn. We don't need the Consign to memory that much right now, so this is probably my pitch to the Force of Negation if they smallpox here. Don't even care if they smallpox that much. Alright, we've got a forest, so they're not doing that. Just a loam. That's a very good target for our Force of Negation. Alright, we lined up our Force of Negation into a Life from Loam, which is very much best case scenario for us right there. I'll play this Swamp out, so we have guaranteed Dauthi Voidwalker next turn. Like, you could say, oh yeah, but Dauthi Voidwalker can cover the loam, but they get at least one turn of loam going. And they also get lots of removal in their deck to kill our Dauthi Voidwalker, potentially. A Boseiju. That's not a Wasteland. It's going to be a Grist. A Barrowgoyf. Get out of here. Generous Ent. Okay, let's have our Dauthi Voidwalker up and running. We can cycle this Generous Ent to go and get a Tropical Island. I think is the only thing left in our deck that can fetch. I don't think we're... well, I guess we could hardcast it. It's not out of the realms of possibility. We don't have any reanimation left in our deck. I think we're just going to hold on to this for a little bit. Malevolent Rumble. So they can get the Saga or the Hatchery. We already have the answer for the Saga, which I imagine is what they get here. I can't see them wanting another Hatchery. This does put all of these cards underneath the Dauthi Voidwalker, though. They did choose the Urza Saga. We will Wasteland that next turn. Do they have a follow-up here? They can't cast a Grist, but they could cast another Barrowgoyf, which would be problematic for us. It's a Barrowgoyf. Okay. Now, we did board in a bunch of removal to help this out, so we could still draw... okay, we didn't draw anything particularly useful. If we cast Smallpox, that really helps our opponent. We could cast Abrupt Decay off of this, which I think we might have to do. And then we're just holding for a bit. So this gets a land out of our deck, but we could just hold this until we want a shuffle off of a Brainstorm, and that's just going to be a much better use for this than just pulling out a land right now. Like the marginal thin-in versus having a shuffle in hand. Like, I'm going to choose a shuffle every day of the week. Orcish Bowmasters, pretty good, especially since we're trying to line up Brainstorm into shuffle. I think our opponent is quite favoured at this point. because they've got this hatchery as well that at some point can just explode and kill us. I'll play this so I can take out an Urza Saga before it learns how to make mana, in case that's relevant. Our opponent's now going to start clocking us. It's not a huge clock, and we do have more Barrowgoyfs that we can draw. We did board in a bunch of those. Right, they have a Wasteland, so they can Wasteland our Wasteland. If we do get low for mana, we can always use this Generous Ent to get some more mana back. Let's just make it look like we're about to Bowmasters, just to freak them out a little bit. I don't know. Just felt like doing that. A little bit of gamesmanship. By playing out this Wasteland, it does expose us to the Wasteland our Wasteland plan. Our opponent can have a Brazen Borrower. That is worth my time here. So now we're representing Hardcast Force of Wills. They're probably going to try and interrupt what we're doing. They can Wasteland their own hatchery as well. Looks like that's what they're going for. No Consign to memory here, unfortunately. We're 1 mana away from just casting the Generous Ent, though. We annoyingly can't bounce and play the Borrower. That's quite a big swing. Can we draw the land for Generous Ent? No. We do have Force of Will / Brazen Borrower. Brazen Borrower can be a removal spell for an insect token. I think I actually use it as a removal spell for a Orcish Bowmaster, though. Which I think we have to do. Our opponent doesn't have any black mana over there right now. Right, let's get this Brazen Bee in. Trade it off with the Bowmaster. Oh no, it can't trade off with the Bowmaster, can it? It's only trade off with creatures flying. Of course. So our Force of Will is down if they have something to follow up with. Malevolent Rumble. That's not the sort of thing that we would counterspell anyway. Chains of Mephistopheles. Right, so they don't get the Witherbloom. They might go for Chains, but they don't have any black sources. So I imagine they're just going to go for Swamp or Catacombs. Catacombs probably get some Surveil lands. That's the better one. Oh, they chose Swamp. Okay. And there it is. Nice little Mercadian Mask Swamp there. I don't think even drawing the land here helps. No, we're just dead. Let's go to the sideboard again. Do we want to remain on the pivot plan? I do just like Reanimates here. Do we need the Collector Ouphe? I think we'll take out the Collector Ouphe and Consigns to get some Reanimates back in. So we're going to have 3 Reanimates. That's basically like 3 more copies of Barrowgoyf, because our opponent's got Barrowgoyf, we've got Barrowgoyf. I don't think we're going to go back into doing the full Reanimator here. Black-green is like one of the best decks at handling graveyard stuff. Okay, we can keep this. We can have a turn 2 Generous Ent. We can actually play on basics here. Oh, they've mulliganed to 5. So that means our Thoughtseize is going to be quite impactful. Now, they might have some graveyard hate like Leyline that they're mulling to, which makes our Generous Ent plan worse. But we can still Thoughtseize like their Barrowgoyf and then Reanimate it. I think we are going to play on basics. So this is going to get us a Swamp. Actually, can we play on basics here? I don't really want my first land being wasted. But this has to go and get a black source for next turn. Actually, no, it doesn't have to get a black source, right? Could we blue cycle this and then black this? Yeah, we'll just play on basics. Alright, let's Thoughtseize our opponent's 5-card hand. Chains of Mephistopheles. Orcish Bowmasters. And Mox Diamond. I think I'm more concerned by the Bowmasters than the Chains. Bowmasters attacks and blocks and impacts our life total. Chains just makes our cantrips into looting effects. And sometimes us discarding a card isn't necessarily the worst thing. Alright, so we're seeing the Mox Diamond, presumably pitching the Wasteland because we load off on a basic. Yep. And they're going to jam the Chains. That's fine. That's not really what our plan is about here. They've got 1 card in hand. A Barrowgoyf. That's a nice one, isn't it? Go and get an island. I'm going to cycle this Generous Ents. I'm going to go and get... Is it worth getting a Surveil land here? I don't think I want a Surveil land. I'm just going to get... Is it Bayou or Trop? I think it's Trop. And then we just bring back this Generous Ent. And now we've got a large friend that can kill our opponent in 4 swings. And we get to follow up with another friend that is not as large, but is pretty scary. A land. Smallpox is not going to be my friend here. But they have just been ripping off the top, so... Black. Okay, so they've got a Barrowgoyf. Okay, I would trade this for this and then drop our own Barrowgoyf. That seems fine. Alternatively, we could crack this clue token and then fatal push this. That seems very good to me. Sorry, it's a food token, not a clue token. Get out of here, Barrowgoyf. And now they can't even Wasteland us off of having Barrowgoyf next turn. They can't even smallpox us off of it because we lose an Ent, a land, and a Force, and then we just go Wasteland, Barrowgoyf. We are in command of this game, but the Pox deck has some pretty scary things in it. You know, Pox itself is pretty spooky. They can double Pox over the course of a couple of turns, and that gets real spooky too. Black, black. Black, green. This is going to be like a Shoulder's Edict. Let's get Barrowgoyf in. We can Wasteland before our opponent gets the ability to make mana off of an Urza Saga or something. We are presenting lethal damage. We need to be able to blow up their own Numidian Hatchery to get through this, really. Right, no play from our opponent. 2 cards in their hand. And they've scooped it up. Alright, 1-0 after a single round. Not a bad start to the league. Let's go to round 2. Ugh, a Bayou hand. This is part of the downside of this particular build. I think we have to mulligan this. Island Ponder. And then we can just chuck away this Archon that we don't want in our hand anyway. We do have to get a non-basic island. This is going to be Underground Sea, and then we cast Ponder. Undercity Sewers, and the Archon. So we put the Archon on top. Sorry, on the bottom. But we put that one away first. And then we can put some other lands on top. So we draw the Undercity Sewers. Next time we draw the Wasteland, then we Undercity Sewers, get rid of the Archon. And then we can double Wasteland our opponent with the Daze backup. And that's quite a lot of interaction. And then we're kind of ready to reanimate later on. Maybe we could have just got rid of that for something better. I think this is a relatively strong approach. If we have double Daze, keeping a pile that allows us to leverage them is something I'm a fan of. If our opponent has Reanimate, we can fight over that with Daze and Force of Negation. If we just given our opponent a target, that's a little bit spooky. I'm not interfering with a Brainstorm. If there's a Tamiyo in play, maybe we think about it, but just a naked Brainstorm like that isn't what I'm trying to mess with right now. A Thoughtseize. I think I'm going to Daze this, bouncing our Undercity Sewers. So this way our opponent doesn't know what they're playing around, and the Daze is losing efficacy anyway. We don't have a green source to really leverage this. I think I'm happy to keep making our Dazes work. We're just going to go in at our opponent's lands. If we can get a green source, we can put a Metamorphosis Fanatic on top of our library. They're going to go get the basic swamp here. No. Let's try and Daze his Murktide. We floated the one in case they have a Daze. They have a Force here though. It's pretty spooky. Now we can just draw Reanimate and then the game kind of ends. But we don't have infinite time to draw it. A Brazen Borrower, that's not a bad one, is it? Alright, let's get the Sewers in. See if we can dig our way towards something. I don't think I actually want the Tamiyo right now. We want to Brazen Borrower this out and play, I guess, next turn. Ponder from our opponent. I'm sure our opponent used to be an Elves player. A Thoughtseize. Yep, I think we just let that hit. They can take the Borrower, which shuts off our Force of Negation as well. This card is blank right now. So I think the pick is the Borrower. Our opponent agrees. They hit us for 6. We need to draw a Reanimate. Not a Reanimate. It's kind of like a Reanimate if you look at it sideways though. Because we can Worldly Tutor, put the Metamorphosis Fanatic on top, get back our Archon of Cruelty. It blows up the Murktide without costing us life. Now all this has to resolve. That's the one caveat to our plan. A Nethergoyf, sure, that's when they can sacrifice instead of the Murktide Regent. That's Worldly Tutor. Oh, it's a miracle. Can I please resolve the spell, opponent? Be nice. A Daze. Oh dear, oh dear. So we are dead. We had to swing out there because we're dead if we don't. Didn't quite work out. So we could have shuffled that Ponder away. But a lot of that game ended up being hinged around us trying to get this Archon of Cruelty into play. I think that's okay. What would I like in this matchup? Maybe some Barrowgoyfs. We don't really need counter magic. We're just going to keep presenting threats until our opponent gets fed up with us. Let's have a couple of Dauthi Voidwalkers in the Barrowgoyfs. Do we want access to removal? Yes. How do we fit in the removal? That is a different question, isn't it? Maybe how Dauthi Voidwalker is okay early on, but then it kind of loses its power later on. Because if we can stop them building up their graveyard in the first place, it's really good. We can save a Daze. Maybe we just don't get to play the Dauthi Voidwalkers. Alternatively, we could just cut another Daze, get a Dauthi Voidwalker in still. Our opponent's going to be playing around Daze anyway, so we're just going to be constantly shoving things that they have to care about. So this is a matchup where doing the Worldly Tutor thing, where it actually costs us a card from our hand because it's not replacing itself straight away, means that the resource attrition battle here, which is what these games often come down to, is going to be much easier for our opponent to win. Which is why we're boarding out a bunch of other bits and pieces. Island Tamiyo Keep. I'm going to set this up in a way where we play the Tamiyo off of a non-basic, so we can play the Dauthi Voidwalker the following turn. Our plan here is to just keep jamming threats. If our opponent's going to be trying to get tricky with counter spells and messing with our graveyard, we're just going to keep sending guys in. Underground Sea. We're going to see a Ponder or something. It's a Thoughtseize. Sure, take a look. We can set up Generous Ent being reanimated. That's fine. Not the most impressive, but fine. We can go for like a multi-step line where we use this to get a Surveil land, then we Worldly Tutor, and then Surveil the card into our graveyard. That's a lot of steps. We took the Worldly Tutor. Okay, the card disadvantage spell, basically. That's interesting. A Thoughtseize. Let's get the Tamiyo in. I think we're going to Thoughtseize this turn rather than trying to jam this Dauthi Voidwalker into a Daze. Play out our basic. Daze, Nethergoyf, Bowboys. I guess we take out the Bowboys. I can cycle this Generous Ent, which I think I probably will do, and go and get the Hedge Maze. Alright, I drew a Ponder for turn. So it's probably going to be Ponder into Nethergoyf, would be my assumption here. Now we've got a Polluted Delta. Here comes a Nethergoyf. There it is. We can use this as a shuffle effect, but I think I'm just going to cycle it now and get the Hedge Maze. Let's go and get a clue. I think we're not going to play into these double Daze, because I think our opponent will double Daze to stop the Dauthi Voidwalker in. So I'm just going to Hedge Maze and then Clue token. We're going to Clue token now to get around potential Bowmaster. Reanimate. That's a pretty good one. We can play that through double Daze, get a Generous Ent. It's bigger than a Nethergoyf. It's going to be difficult for our opponent to answer because Fatal Push will not hit it. We take 3 here. We take a bit more. Obviously, we have the Generous Ent, but we can crack the food token to gain a little bit. Another Nethergoyf. We've got almost perfect information here. Another Reanimate. I'm going to play out this Bayou and use this Bayou to cast a Reanimate targeting our Generous Ent. We can get back their Orcish Bowmasters as well. Force of Will pitching one of the Dazes. You got it. I'm just going to do it again. They've got a Daze in hand. So they're trying to make us pay one so that we can't crack a clue. No, we're just in with this guy. And we can attack with our Tamiyo. If our opponent has a removal spell, we can crack the food token instead of the clue token. They're drawing blind because they milled over the Thoughtseize. We're just going to be Tamiyo gaming, I think, at this point. They can get back this Nethergoyf. Alright, they've got another one. They've got one card in hand and it's Daze. Okay, so there's no point us drawing a card there because if we play it, it will be straight into a Daze. We get to draw a card now because we know there's no Bowmaster. Barrowgoyf. That's a good one, isn't it? 1, 2, 3. How do you feel about Barrowgoyf? I think we're going to hold back on blocks here with the Tamiyo. We just need to get through this turn cycle and then I think we're going to be winning. Brainstorm. Daze is almost certainly going to go away. We'll keep it in mind, but we're not going to have it up on the screen to sort of check on. A Murktide. What size is it? Big size. Understood. It's shrunk their Nethergoyf though. Let's attack with the Barrowgoyf here. Just guarantee this life. Yes, we'll use his ability. Another Barrowgoyf. That's obviously not too shabby, is it? I'm not going to play the Dauthi Voidwalker. I'm going to hold up this clue/food token. I'm more inclined to pop the food token because I think the way our opponent wins this game is if they can just get over the edge with like a little bit of damage, because we have a more impressive board on the whole. These are becoming 3/4s. They could double block and... Alright, they've just had enough. That's fair enough. Hey, I like how we sideboarded there. I think we just want to run it back. We're not really about interacting that much. We're about saying, can you deal with what we're doing? We've got lots of 1-for-1 stuff, like removal spells, Thoughtseize. We're not trying to counter anything on a stack. We're just trying to run our opponent out of trading pieces. Removal spell, Barrowgoyf, double Surveil land. I think this is acceptable because Barrowgoyf is just so good in the matchup. because it beats up on any Nethergoyfs. Grafdigger's Cage. That makes our Reanimate worse, for sure. I think we're going to go for trying to Wasteland our opponent out of this one, see if that messes with their plan. And then we're just going to start doing Tamiyo stuff. Undercity Sewers. Left a card on top. I've got a feeling they've left a land on top. A Barrowgoyf. Sure, let's go get a basic island and deploy the Tamiyo. If they Daze this, that's quite a big tempo hit. No response from our opponent, we're just in with the Tamiyo. So now they have to contend with this, and we've obviously got our pivot plan in as well. So the Grafdigger's Cage isn't really that big a deal. This Reanimate in our hand is annoying. It's a Nethergoyf. We can fail push that if we want to. We don't necessarily have to, though. I don't mind drawing the old Brainstorm, especially when we have a card that we desperately want to put back as well. Let's get Verdant Catacombs in. Brainstorm is also before an Orcish Bowmasters can get involved. Okay, I think this is a pretty easy one, isn't it? We put back the Reanimate and the Archon of Cruelty. This flips. We plus. Do we need to crack this now and deal with this Nethergoyf? Or can we get a nice little Ponder in? I'm going to get a Ponder in before a Bowmaster comes down. It does expose us a little bit to Wasteland, but they're already kind of behind here. We don't want these cards. I'm going to shuffle off that one. Okay, we drew a Brainstorm, which is certainly one of the better ones in that pile. Doesn't really feel like this is a Wasteland game anymore. Thoughtseize. Alright, we're going to lose a Fatal Push or a Barrowgoyf, I suspect. This will put a creature in the graveyard to make our Barrowgoyf bigger. It will put a sorcery in to make their Nethergoyf bigger. The Tamiyo can still rebuy stuff from the graveyard because it puts it into our hands rather than casting it. But we're not really in the market for doing that just yet. Got a land. I assume this is just going to come in and check the Tamiyo. We're playing the Tamiyo sub-game now. Not a very enjoyable play pattern. Let's plus this Tamiyo. I don't really want to run this into a Daze. I think I'm just going to... I'm going to Brainstorm, I'm going to Ponder. I think I'm going to Brainstorm because we have access to the push now for a potential spooky friend. We can just get another Tamiyo in. That's kind of interesting. So we can use the Brazen Borrower to set up Reanimation as well. So we can bounce this, get the Metamorphosis Fanatic, and just have a Barrowgoyf back again. I don't really want to play into our opponent's Daze though. So we are leaving this up for Fatal Push. Well, I'm hoping we don't have to use that. They obviously know we have this Fatal Push as well, so they're going to play around it where they can. Brazen Borrower on our poor defenseless Tamiyo. I could kill my own Tamiyo and get rid of the Borrower forever. I'm not really about doing that. Could be checking my Tamiyo here. You are indeed. He's just bought us 4 life so far. A Thoughtseize. Yeah, Thoughtseize is good. Another Barrowgoyf bites the dust. But they are running low on resources. They're probably looking to put this Brazen Borrower in. So the top card of our library is a Worldly Tutor. If we draw a card with this clue, we could Worldly Tutor next turn. Untap. In our upkeep, we can bounce the Grafdigger's Cage. But that doesn't play around a Daze, which could be one of the last cards our opponent would have in their hand at this point. I think we're just deploying this Tamiyo. And I'm going to play out this... This is our only green source, which is a little bit worrying. I think we still play it out, though. Gives us more flexibility of what we're doing. Now, we also just have the We Have Tamiyo, You Lose the Game button that we can press soon. So they're going to play this Brazen Borrower. I'm going to crack this clue and then Fatal Push their guy, I think. That does play into the Daze, though. I think that's a reasonable exchange on this way, because it doesn't blow out our entire play. This will grow their Nethergoyf to a 3. They didn't have any interaction for that. So we can, in our upkeep, Worldly Tutor. No, we can't. We need 1 more mana to do that, right? So on our next turn cycle, we're going to threaten the Metamorphosis Fanatic. If the top card of our library happens to be a Metamorphosis Fanatic, then we can just bounce this and get it going. And then our opponent probably loses this one. The Blue-Black Reanimator deck was traditionally pretty good into a non-token creature of my choice. Okay. I was going to say, the Blue-Black Reanimator deck was traditionally pretty good into the Dimir Tempo deck. Okay, Tamiyo is actually going to take 3 damage this time. But again, we probably soaked up 10 or so damage. Orcish Bowmasters is their last card. Okay. I could just get a Barrowgoyf this turn. Is that better than setting up some weird multi-turn line? I think it probably is, isn't it? Let's Worldly Tutor in the upkeep. Let's get a Barrowgoyf. Let's deploy a Barrowgoyf. Let's minus this. Oh, sorry, plus this to minus their guys. And now we're in a pretty comfortable position. Our opponent's living off the top. We still have some extra resources we can utilize. We do have Tamiyo, which can do some cool stuff. We can go and get back a Fatal Push and blow up their Nethergoyf. We have the Borrower is going to be our answer for a Murktide Regent, which is one of the scarier things our opponent can do. Petty Theft. Don't love that for us. Tamiyo still lives through this turn, though. Once again, it's like soaked up nearly 20 damage at this point. It's bananas. Plus this. Do I want to make a Murktide plus Brazen Borrower this turn cycle? Or would I rather just get this Barrowgoyf in? I want to save the Brazen Borrower for something that's more relevant to hit with it. Also, we can still do our Metamorphosis Fanatic line if we draw it. Just casting the Brazen Borrower. You got it. They can't really attack here. Atraxa Unifier. Not the ideal draw. Let's plus this. Let's pop our graveyard out and get this Murktide going. Don't want to leave a Fatal Push in there for the Tamiyo. I think I do, actually. So I'm not going to make a full-size Murktide here. We go Brainstorm, Ponder, Brainstorm, Worldly Tutor. We just get rid of some land. Do I attack with the Barrowgoyf or do I just hold back on blocks? I think we just hold back on blocks for this turn, and then next turn we can start sending in. Alternatively, we can just play Protect the Queen with the Tamiyo, and then we can just bounce the Bowmaster on the turn we're going. Although we might need to do more than just bounce the Bowmaster. We can also just kill the Bowmaster next turn with this Tamiyo. Alright, they're just scooping it up. We assembled the right number of pieces and our opponent could not get through it. Alright, we're 2-0. Deck looks pretty good. Let's go to round 3. Island Ponder Keep. I'll give this one a whirl. I think I'm going to lead off on Thoughtseize because there are decks that can kill us on turn 1. It's just good practice to make sure that we're doing everything right. This also lets us know what we're pondering for. Alright, a Delver matchup. We can take their initial threat. I think that's probably our best bet here. We're not overflowing with removal in our main deck by any stretch of the imagination. So next turn we can get a basic island and then Ponder and Thoughtseize. Thoughtseize can take the Murktide. I assume we're going to see a Ponder here. Our opponent knows what they're looking for because they're looking for a threat. Or just filling up their graveyard with Murktide and having some nice permission along the way is probably reasonable. And they wouldn't mind another land either. So they're pondering with enough information, even though they've only seen Swamp Thoughtseize, which could be a lot of different decks. A Worldly Tutor, you say? That is an interesting proposition, isn't it? I'm going to play this one out. I'm going to Thoughtseize again. Dragon's Rage Channeler, Murktide Regent. I don't particularly want this Channeler. I also don't want to deal with this Murktide Regent either, which is going to be coming online very soon. Let me take the Murktide. And then I'm going to Ponder here. I'm not expecting our opponent to Daze this Ponder. This is not really what we're after. I think this is in any order in shuffle. Another Worldly Tutor. Okay, well, we have a line that gets us to a big monster. Will it be enough? Misty Rainforest. We probably have to get Atraxa so it doesn't die to double bolt. I'm going to see Channeler here. There it is. Okay, I'm going to Worldly Tutor and put an Atraxa in the graveyard. Because of the Daze, we can't just upkeep, put the Metamorphosis Fanatic on top. Right, they're bolting us, so we probably could have done with an Archon in that situation then. We have to get through one more turn cycle after this, and then we can do our thing. Misty Rainforest, 2 cards in hand. Getting attack down to 10, which is effectively 7 because of this bolt. Another Worldly Tutor. We can't play around this Daze effectively enough, can we? So I think we're just going to Brainstorm, and then we can use a Worldly Tutor as a shuffle as well as a fetch land. That's a lot of land. Okay, I think we're just passing here. We could Ponder and try and look for something, but I think we're just going to pass and go for our Worldly Tutor plan. Probably going to get a Surveil land. Yep, there it is. They put 1 card on top of their library. Not really what I like to see from our opponent. Okay, the end step. Crack this. Going to get ourselves a Bayou so that we have double green, or for this turn in case we need to multi-step this. Let's go for the Worldly Tutor. Please Force of Will this. You're pitching your Daze. That would make me very happy. A Brainstorm. You got it. Force of Will, pitching Force of Will. And then they get to Surveil away. That worked out about as well as it could have for us. Let's go again. I can still have a Daze in the mix. We are kind of just dead to double Lightning Bolt though. So let's get Metamorphosis Fanatic. Let's get this Metamorphosis Fanatic in. Let's get back Atraxa. Just like the bad old days. Alright, they've had enough of that. They know what they're drawing next turn, so they know that they can't... I guess they could Lightning Bolt us, Daze their Lightning Bolt, and mill over the top 2 cards and have a shot at drawing a Lightning Bolt. But we obviously scupper that with any sort of hatred we can find. I think I would like some Barrowgoyf for this matchup, alongside removal spells. I don't think we're doing counterspell stuff again. I don't mind having some having maybe a Force of Will that we can find off of an Atraxa. Actually, do I like Thoughtseizes? Do I like Thoughtseizes more than Force of Will? Obviously, losing life is kind of a big deal, but this is an enabler sometimes for our plan, which is good to know about. Corey Steelcutter is the sort of thing that I would want to counterspell, but we can obviously Thoughtseize that out of our opponent's hand as well. Alright, so we're going to keep the 1-for-1, and if our opponent burns us out, they burn us out. I think we're just going to keep the plan that we like into the tempo decks. It worked last round. Obviously, this is a very different tempo sort of deck. I like Island Ponder. Dislike Atraxa a great deal in our opener. This is already a mulligan. I think we're just going to mulligan this. Try and get something a bit better. Okay. What do we get rid of here? Probably the... It's either the Atraxa or the Metamorphosis Fanatic. I think it's the Metamorphosis Fanatic because the Atraxa is a blue card. But we have more lands in this hand. And we got Brainstorm, which is kind of like having a Ponder. Starting off with a threat. I'm not going to wasteland our opponent here. Well, I guess we'll see what we do on our turn. Undercity Sewers. Okay. A plan is forming in my head. I think I'm going to Brainstorm here. So put this back on top. And then it doesn't really matter what the next card is, does it? Put this Ponder on top, so I'd like to hide the shuffle effect. So next turn, we draw the Ponder, we Undercity Sewers, mill over the Atraxa. Our opponent might have Grafdigger's Cage in their deck, which is something we'll have to work through at some point. And then we need to find some green mana, and then we get to access our Metamorphosis Fanatic plan again. Hopefully we can test our opponent's interaction before then. Alright, maybe just have like a really good pressure hand, which would also be fine to keep. So let's bin off this Atraxa. Let's Ponder. A removal spell that also helps us pitch a card from our hand if we want to do that. A green source, which we definitely want as well. Okay, I think we're going to keep these. And then next turn we're going to fetch away the Thoughtseize. We could Thoughtseize to try and punch a hole. I guess it depends how much damage we're expecting to take over the next couple of turns. Can we afford to Thoughtseize? Okay, they've revealed a Force of Will. I guess we might need that Thoughtseize. But this means the Dragon's Rage Channel is only connecting for 1. This looks like an interesting list. They've got unable to scream as well over there. Bit of Triumph. I do like having access to this Bit of Triumph. I think the play this turn begins with Brainstorm though. I'll put back some lands that we don't really want here. Play this out. This gets us our green. This gets us our Thoughtseize. See what you're working with, opponent. They could Brainstorm and protect their hand. Could be hardcast Force of Negation. It is the hardcast Force of Negation. I think we go for a green source here, Tropical Island, and deploy our Tamiyo. Is this worth a counterspell to you? I don't think it should be, given your aggressive stuff you've got going on. Daze. Yikes. That is some good interaction you got there, opponent. Some of the finest, in fact. Yeah. This is just a classic Delvering. And because it's so much more difficult to set up what we're trying to do, it's very difficult for us to come in underneath our opponent's disruption. Right, so this is going to hurt us a fair bit. At least we didn't take 2 from our Thoughtseize. I'll take that as some solace. A bit of Triumph can nail the Channeler here. And then we just have to hope that we can get an Atraxa in before it's too late. Our opponent probably has less than 4 Lightning Bolts in their deck now. They certainly would have boarded out the Chain Lightning in favour of some stuff that can interact on the stack for a matchup like this. Thundering Falls, milling over a Wasteland. I'm glad they're not interested in that. A Ponder. I'm interested in casting Ponder, I think. Reanimate is a pretty awkward one at this stage of the game. But we could maybe bait our opponent with it. I think I would like to Fatal Push this Dragon's Rage Channeler. Okay, we have a bit of Triumph in our opponent's turn to deal with this Delver. Then we go and get the Bayou here so we can't be wastelanded off green. I'm not going to try and bait our opponent with that Reanimate play like we briefly thought about. I will discard a card, I think. I don't really want to get caught out by losing 3 life here. Okay, they're just being very disciplined with their Force of Will. They're going to drop another threat, or are we going to get a tiny bit of breathing room? Murktide Regent. No breathing room allowed. So we know they have a Force of Will. Do they have a blue card? Probably. Let's Worldly Tutor in the upkeep. Let's put Metamorphosis Fanatic on top. Let's draw for turn. Let's reveal this. Let's make our opponent use their Force of Will. I'd be amazed if our opponent didn't have a blue card here. Oh, they got a Consign to memory for the trigger. Yep, that'll do. Pretty darn good there for our opponent. How do I feel about Dazes on the draw, though? On the play, sorry. Oh, we're trying to hit Barrowgoyf mana is the problem. I think I just like how we have the deck, to be honest. And we're just going to go back in again. There's definitely a debate as to whether you want the Thoughtseizes or the Forces. Maybe we could trade some Thoughtseizes for Dazes. I do like just being able to poke a hole, because the thing that we're doing is quite powerful. So if we can just poke a little hole at the right time. This is not a keeper. Let's mulligan this. Double Reanimate. I think I'm going to put away an Underground Sea. And we're going to play on basics here. We're just going to begin with a Swamp, and we can Thoughtseize our opponent. Stop their early pressure. Buy us a bit more time. Try and ponder our way around. Force of Negation, Force of Will, Spell Pierce, Dragon's Rage, Channeler. So if we take their threat, they don't have anything. Apart from like a bunch of interaction. But if they're not clocking us, eventually we can assemble the pieces to push through. If after 2 for 1 with a Force of Will and a Force of Negation, then eventually we can overcome that. They drew an item for turn, they're showing it to us. Makes sense. Barrowgoyf. This is exactly the sort of play we want with our Reanimate, so we just keep bringing back Barrowgoyf and our opponent has a horrible time. Let's ponder. You're going to Spell Pierce? Sure. Just trying to interact wherever they can. That's fine. We're just looking for land. We want to drop the Barrowgoyf. Don't have to Force of Will it. And then we can Reanimate, which they have to Force of Negation it. And then we traded 2 for 4. And then we end up being able to just Reanimate it again. And then this is such a difficult thing for them to kill. Alright, let's go for a Brainstorm, please. Another Spell Pierce? I do like Spell Pierce. There used to be a 4 of Delver decks back when I used to play a lot of Delver. And it was Rug Delver with Nimble Mongoose. Those were the days. Right, we're Pyroblasting, but they also have 1 blue floating for some reason. We have perfect information, so I'm not really sure why they had that blue. But it also didn't matter because they weren't casting anything else anyway. You see this Wasteland now? We are. Thoughtseize. I am down to Thoughtseize my opponent. They could hard cast a Force of Negation here, which would actually be really good for us, I think. They are preserving information of what their last card is, but we don't take 2 damage from that, and we still get to take one of their counter spells. We just need to find land and just wreck our opponent's face with this Barrowgoyf. Not the thing we wanted. I'm not going to try and Reanimate a Dragon's Rage Channeler. It's just not what I want to use these Reanimates for. And we have a premier target that's almost certainly going to go to the bin. Double Wasteland. So we're going to get 1 stab at hardcasting the Barrowgoyf. And this is that stab. This is going to get Force of Willed. And then we're just going to Reanimate it every turn until our opponent dies. I'm going to pitch the Consign here. I don't believe they're going to have any sort of exile removal. They could have that... the little enchant creature that turns it into a 0/1. Okay, they're hard casting the Force. It's certainly better than pitch casting it. And now we're going to get our Tropical Island Wastelanded so we can't cast any more Barrowgoyfs. If they've drawn a Grafdigger's Cage, I'm going to be very unhappy. That's something they would tap the Wasteland for mana. But I assume they just meant to tap to sacrifice it to kill our thing. Not that they want a colourless mana. Don't do it, opponent. Don't play a Grafdigger's Cage. I think they would just slam it if they had it, right? They've got 3 cards in hand. They don't have access to hardcast Force of Will. Generous Ent. Let's Reanimate the Barrowgoyf. Oh, we're just in with it. That's pretty cool. We can cycle this Generous Ent in a sec. Is this just going to get borrowed? No. I guess I don't have any more counter magic. And the game ends because Barrowgoyf is a very silly Magic the Gathering card. Not too shabby. Let's go to round 4. No lands that work for mana. We're going to send this one back. Oh dear, oh dear. I don't like this one very much. I think we have to send this one back. Alright. I think we're going to keep 2 lands and then some spells. We can play on basics so we're not getting wasted. I think I'm going to lead off with the Swamp off of this land. Oh. our opponent's doing this sort of thing, are they? Amusingly, I think we have to take this Cabal Therapy. Alright. It's a Reanimator mirror match, but our opponent's playing Turbo Reanimator, which is the better performing Reanimator variant at the moment. There's a Lotus Petal as well. Just getting stuff out of their hands so we can't take them. Is this going to be a Surveil land? No. Do they find something good? Is this Collective Brutality? It is Collective Brutality. That is a phenomenal card for them to draw. So we're going to lose our Ponder. At least they don't know that we're doing Reanimate stuff. And they discarded an Atraxa. Can we draw a Reanimate right now? That'd be sick. That was not a Reanimate. I'm not going to play out this Tamiyo, which does tell our opponent that we've drawn counter magic. But we need to counter their spell or we die. So here we are. I think we can go and get a Hedge Maze off this. Shallow Grave. No, thank you. Get a Hedge Maze, because we're not going to lose our colours against a matchup like this. So this just means that we have access to all of our colours. Brainstorm. It's better than a random draw, so I guess we take it. It gives us 3 looks at a Reanimate, which just wins us the game. I'm pretty sure. Let's go. Well, well, well. I guess we put these cards on top and we hope that the Daze can hold for us. They draw a 1-mana reanimation spell, like Reanimate, we die. Okay. We have perfect information, and they milled over the cards, so they don't have it right now. I put the Thoughtseize on top rather than the Murktide. We're just holding. There's no point Thoughtseizing. Oh dear. They're going to Thoughtseize us. Would I rather have a Hedge Maze to dig? I think I would. You can take my Thoughtseize. They're going to pay here. Yeah, that's fine. We just wanted to reset the Hedge Maze so we can have another Surveil towards something that can get us out of this horrible position we're in. All it takes is a single Reanimate, though. And then we take away their reanimation target and also draw a billion cards. Bayou is not the one. Glad we bounced the Hedge Maze, because that would be another dead draw. Come on, opponent. Don't kill me. Reanimate. Alright, we might be dead. Have a look. Unmask, animate dead. Yeah, we're not winning there. I don't hate having access to the old Collector Ouphe here. I would like Force of Negation. Obvious reasons. Dauthi Voidwalkers get straight in. We can make them lose some of their guys. Like we can have some removal that works, but I think I'd rather just not have their creatures come into play in the first place. Collector Ouphe is very medium. These are the 4 best cards we have to bring in. What are the cards that we're not particularly interested in? Brazen Borrower. Bouncing one of their guys isn't nothing. Tamiyo is pretty poor in this matchup though. If you take out the Tamiyos, I think we still want to be able to do some of our reanimation stuff. Do we want to trim on some Worldly Tutors because we're going to be able to reanimate some of their things? And maybe we could just have like Barrowgoyfs. It's just fine interactive, fine creatures that can do what we need them to do. We could board out our big top end here. That gets us a Barrowgoyf, and maybe we keep some Tamiyos in because they are blue cards of Force of Will. So we've got 3 Barrowgoyfs, 3 Dauthi Voidwalkers. We can still reanimate their guys with our reanimates, and we have Generous Ent, which we can reanimate, which is okay. We don't want to be putting Atraxa into our graveyard because they'll just animate dead or reanimate it, and then we have a very miserable time. Am I okay with just a Daze to get us through the first turn? It's a lot of selection. Okay. I'm going to believe in the selection here. We do have a counterspell. Go again, Underground Sea. We don't need any green mana in this particular game. I don't know if we're supposed to board out any green mana. I guess we could hard cast a Generous Ent. Thoughtseize, Polluted Delta. I will keep these. We can disrupt our opponent with a Thoughtseize next turn. Hopefully the Daze is enough this turn. It's not easy for them to assemble it all in one turn. That makes our Daze look a lot worse. They did keep a 7, so we shouldn't expect ourselves to get... if we Daze this, our opponent cracks this, they have 3 mana. That is enough for Thoughtseize plus a reanimation spell. If we don't Daze this, they have 4 mana, which is enough for everything. I think the answer is we're actually dead here. I'm going to cut this Dire Ritual off and see if it makes a difference. Oh wow, they're just letting us have a turn. Huh, I was so sure we were dead then. Let's Thoughtseize our opponent. and see if we can make sense of that play. Okay, so need the Faithless Looting. They also have Show and Tell here. Collective Brutality. Show and Tell is the way that they get their creature into play. Faithless Looting also pretty good, but we're certainly not taking that. We just take the Show and Tell here. That does explain the line that they took. I can't believe we managed to make it out of that turn alive. We have a Thoughtseize ready to go next turn. We get to Brainstorm first and shuffle. Right, maybe we don't get to Brainstorm first. So they're Thoughtseizing us. You take the Brainstorm, right? Yeah. So we ponder and then we get to do our thing. Thoughtseize. We know almost our opponent's entire hand. Okay, I'm going to ponder here. Force of Will is pretty big game. We have an option available to us to Thoughtseize here, and I think we should take it. Collective Brutality, Show and Tell. Show and Tell is the easiest way they can do anything, so we'll take the Show and Tell. Faithless Looting is card disadvantage. Obviously, having an Atraxa in hand isn't great use anyway, but if they Faithless Looting, it means they're less likely. Are they unmasking us? Exiling Collective Brutality. Sure. They take our Force of Will, leave us with a Ponder. We get to ponder into some more interaction. Faithless Looting. This is the big Reanimate turn for our opponent. I think we're pretty cold to an Atraxa. Double Atraxa going in the bin. They have one card in hand. Can I draw a Reanimate or ponder into a Reanimate, please? Our opponent hasn't even seen that section of our deck yet. That is an interesting one. I think we just hold up here. They know that we've drawn Force of Will if we do this thing. Because why would we not cast our Ponder? I just don't want to go shields down when we immediately die to anything they have. Another blue card. Oh, it's a Reanimate. Okay, we get to win the game. Cool. Let me have your Atraxa, please. I would like to have access to Force of Will. Creature-wise, I guess we take a Barrowgoyf. We'll take any old land is fine. Done. Play land out. Oh no, our opponent's just conceding. Sure. That works for me. I like how we sideboarded. We just go in. I don't think we want Consigns. Consign can sometimes hit things like the Atraxa trigger or an Animate Dead trigger. But I don't think it's better than any of the pieces we already have access to. We have Force of Will and a Thoughtseize. I think we keep this one. We're not cold to our opponent having one piece of disruption, like an Unmask. And then we get to untap and Thoughtseize our opponent's hand if they can't make it through this turn, which seems unlikely on 5 cards, because they've just used 2 to unmask us. They took our Thoughtseize. Okay. We're probably just going to be wastelanding our opponent here. If it's interaction, we're going to take it. Takes us further away from Barrowgoyf. But our object of the game for us is to not lose the game. We're not trying to win the game. We should win the game at some point if we don't lose it. Because our deck plays more normal Magic. Our opponent is doing some busted stuff. Okay, so they have the Ancient Tomb. This is to help power out the Show and Tells. Generous Ent. Okay, I'm happy enough with a Generous Ent. Let's Forest Cycle this. We're going to go and get ourselves the Hedge Maze. That selection into our deck. Another blue card would be great. Dauthi Voidwalker. Okay, really punished for getting the Hedge Maze. Understood. I guess we leave this on top. We can play the Voidwalker next turn. They can reanimate our Generous Ent. Another Ancient Tomb. That's really not what they want. So Wasteland's Raucous Theatre was real good for us. I wonder if they're supposed to play that after they know we have the Wasteland. We don't know what was in our opponent's hand, so it's hard to tell. Let's go and get an Underground Sea and deploy the Dauthi. I'm still holding out for drawing another blue card at some point, so I'm not going to play a Tamiyo into this board. Tamiyo is not great because we don't get to leverage the stuff that much. What we don't want to see here is a Dark Ritual. I think we have to force a Dark Ritual because that gives them the ability to hand disrupt us. They might just hand disrupt us straight away though. Magus of the Moon. Do I care about Magus of the Moon when we have this swamp in play? No, I don't. Do I care about Faithless Looting? It's kind of the enabler. I'm going to pitch a bunch of cards here. They're not going to be able to show and tell. They're only going to be able to reanimate stuff. But they can't reanimate because we have a Dauthi Voidwalker. I think this is fine. What have they been off? A reanimate. We have now drawn our second blue card. So we have double force backup. And we're just going to be doing the Parade of Barrowgoyfs. I don't think we actually flip cards with the Barrowgoyf. Alright, our opponent's just had enough. Oh, we got the scoop there. That is 4-0 so far. Every single round has been a 2-1. I'm going to play the last round and see if we can get a trophy. Long live the king is dead, all that sort of that jazz. Deck seems pretty solid. We're on the play for the last round. We have an interesting hand, to say the least. We have the ability to go and get a land here. And then we can Worldly Tutor, mill it off. Then we can set up the Worldly Tutor again. Okay, I'm going to keep this one. We've got a game plan here. It leads off with Tropical Island, which our opponent is unlikely to suspect is going to lead to Reanimator shenanigans. We could Generous Ent reanimate that, but I think we can aim a little bit higher here. Let's see if our opponent's on blue. They do have an Ancestral Recall avatar. Oh, it's a mountain. Are we on Painter? We can just free roll our reanimation plan, perhaps. A Lotus Petal. This feels like Painter to me. We do have Force of Will. They could also be Ruby Storm. Soul Guide Lantern. Are you kidding me? This has to be Painter. Alright. We're going to fight over this. Don't Pyroblast me. Alright, they didn't Pyroblast us. So let's cycle this. I think we have to go and get the Undercity Sewers. Oh no, we can't get the Undercity Sewers. It has to be Hedge Maze or Bayou. But then how are we going to get the black mana to reanimate? Then we need to get black mana. We can always just reanimate the Generous Ent. A Brazen Borrower. Would I like to reanimate Generous Ent, or would I like to reanimate Generous Ent with lifelink next turn? Quite like the sound of doing that. That's our plan. We have a Brazen Borrower if we need to bounce something spooky out of play. But we're going to go for the Metamorphosis Fanatic plan. I am making the assumption that our opponent is playing Painter, which I think is a pretty good assumption given what we've seen so far. The Ancient Tomb kind of seals the deal to me. It's going to be a Fable here. It is a Fable. You can have that Fable. I could bounce this guy, but I would rather set up my Worldly Tutor line. So let's get in with the Tutor. Puts Fanatic on top. Oh, it's a miracle. Would you believe it? So Barrowgoyf usually can solo Painter decks pretty handily. We are going to have kind of like a Barrowgoyf here. We also get a nice little food token. That seems like a pretty good turn. The one thing we're trying to avoid is getting Painter Grindstone comboed. We're a little bit shields down this turn, but we've assembled our pressure, which we need to do. Otherwise, our opponent's going to be able to just run away with the game if we just give them time, because they have an infinite, definitely I win the game combo. Whereas we have a combo which is, we put something into play that's probably going to win us the game in a turn or two. And there's a Saga. This is going to be a Grindstone in 3 turns' time. Ensnaring Bridge. Okay. That obviously causes us a little bit of trouble. I would like to be able to counter this on the way down. How are we going to go about doing that? Murktide Regent isn't the one. Do we have any spicy Worldly Tutor stuff in the main? Let's have a little peek. No. Is the answer to that one. We can go and get another Brazen Borrower. We could just tempo this out, force the Ancient Tomb to replay the Ensnaring Bridge. We get to attack for 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. That seems reasonable. We could also just try and save up for a big turn, where we just kill our opponent in one swing. And that means holding up the Brazen Borrower so we don't get comboed out by a Painter Grindstone combo. I really wish we drew a land instead of this Murktide Regent, to be honest. If we bounce the bridge, we get to attack for a bunch. The Ancient Tomb pressures our opponent's life total a little bit more. Do we need to save this, or do we need to pressure? I think the go turn is when they hit the Azure Saga. We're going to go for a bit of a tempo play here and try and push damage. Pyroblast. Alright, that's obviously terrible news for us. I think we do get a lot more from the sideboard than our opponent does, because we get access to Collector Ouphe and some Barrowgoyfs. We don't even need to like assemble a Generous Ent in this fashion. We can just have Barrowgoyfs, which is one of the reasons Red Painter is doing not so great, or hasn't been doing so great for like the last 20 weeks. Okay, so just going to go on the construct plan. Ponder. I am okay to ponder here. See if we can find a little way out of this problem we've put ourselves into. I will take the Polluted Delta. So we can Worldly Tutor and then mill it over this turn. Do I think our opponent is going to Painter's Servant combo us this turn? We have a line where we go get a Surveil land, and if it hits us like an Atraxa just in the blind, then we can really go. I think we just have to represent a bit of strength with 3 cards in hand, and then go for a put the Surveil on the stack, then Worldly Tutor sort of plan. This is going to insulate them against the Archon of Cruelty. I think our opponent has this one, which is likely a singleton Ensnaring Bridge. Okay, if they're putting mana into Years of Saga, they're probably not killing us this turn. So that does give us some purchase here. Pithing Needle. Oh, they're just going to Pithing Needle our Polluted Delta. They are indeed. Oh, that really sucks, doesn't it? I didn't crack this because I was so sure they were going to go and get Grindstone. But now they've just blocked us out there. We don't want to draw the land that's on top of our library here. I'll gain a bunch of life. The Fable. Oh, this whole one's slipping away from us. I got one card in hand though. They are going to get some looting action. We don't necessarily want this land on top of our library. But if we Worldly Tutor, what do we Worldly Tutor for? It's probably for the Brazen Borrower, isn't it? Wait, do we only have one Brazen Borrower? Oh, there's one in exile from early on. And that Force of Will. That is an interesting one. Okay, it's Tamiyo then, isn't it? Not great into the blue blast our opponent can have, but can attack into the Ensnaring Bridge. Our opponent's mid-range plan is unlikely to get through all the stuff we have, but all it needs to do is gum up the works until they kill us. Right, they're going to copy a Shaman token. They will eventually get 2 Fables going, so they can use one to target the other and just make a whole bunch of stuff. How do we actually win? I think we have to put the Tamiyo, draw our deck on the stack and hope our opponent scoops, because we don't actually have a way to beat this Ensnaring Bridge. Pyroblast on that guy, sure. I guess if our opponent plays out a Welder, we can kill the Welder somehow and then get it back. And then start weldering out their things. Right, there's the Grindstone. Another Polluted Delta is an absolute classic there. I think we just reanimate this little Tamiyo. Seems well worth the 1 life here. No point playing this Polluted Delta out. The fact that both of our Borrowers are gone already. Do we have a way of bringing back a Borrower? We can reanimate it, but we don't have a way of like bouncing it again. Painter's Servant. Alright, are they just going to put the Grind You Out on a stack? They've named White. I'm not really sure makes any difference what they name here. Yep, and they're just going for it. That does beat us, unfortunately. Yeah, the one of Ensnaring Bridge just being in their natural draw definitely did some work. I would like Collector Ouphe. I would like some Fatal Pushes and removal spells. I don't hate all of this stuff either. I like the Consigns. I don't really want to be doing this sort of stuff. So how much are we looking at boarding out? Junk. I think our reanimation plan is obviously worse versus our opponent post-board. How much of that do we want to keep in? Worldly Tutor can tutor for this Collector Ouphe. We've got 4 more slots to find. I don't like Thoughtseize that much here. It's okay to poke a little hole, but it's a really bad top deck, and this game is likely going to be about top decks and going back and forth. Right, we're going to submit like this. We don't want all of our blue counter magic versus their like 8 Pyroblast deck. We want to make their Pyroblast worse and just play a bunch of really powerful black creatures, then have a little bit of removal to deal with their guys. 5 lands. I don't think we can keep 5 lands, can we? That's mulligan. Especially when our only thing is just going to be victim to Pyroblast. Okay. We have a line to Atraxa here if we want it. So we could keep this. Play the Bayou here. Get rid of the Bayou, sorry. And we can go for turn 1 Tamiyo, turn 2 fetch land, and then do the Brainstorm trick, which also gets us a Planeswalker. Now, a Pyroblast on our Tamiyo is probably going to be something our opponent wants to prioritize here. Agatha's Soul Cauldron. That's a pretty good one. But now we can just Brainstorm and hide the Atraxa, and that's fine. Would I rather keep Tamiyo as a clue machine, or do I want to just get rid of this junk card from my hand? I'll play out this one because this can also fetch us our basic. Here's a Brainstorm turn. I do like the Dauthi Voidwalker quite a lot here. I don't think we want this Atraxa anymore, and I don't think we want this Tropical Island. So we could go and get the Collector Ouphe going. I think I'd rather cash in my clue first, so I'm going to go get an Underground Sea and Ponder. Barrowgoyf is very much the exact sort of thing I'm looking for. Our opponent can restrict the size of our Barrowgoyf using an Agatha's Soul Cauldron. And the Dauthi Voidwalker doesn't play the best with the Barrowgoyf either, but should hopefully force some action. Blood Moon. We have this Brainstorm. A little bit punished for going for the Ponder here. What is the text on this? If it's a green card, add 1 mana of any colour. It's not really what we're doing now, is it? We know the next card down is a Brainstorm. So plus this, and we'll just hold up the clue crack. Opponent's got us on the ropes. I won't lie. But we wanted to get a black source so we could play the Dauthi Voidwalker here, and we wanted to ponder. Like, I obviously regret it at this point, but I think it was still the right thing to do. A Goblin Engineer. Crack the clue. It's a Brainstorm, obviously, that we know. Do I want to Brainstorm? We don't have any Dazes or Force of Wills. This creature's just going to stick. I'm going to go get Phyrexian Devourer, and that's going to be the combo with Agatha's Soul Cauldron here. Are we going to fail at the last hurdle today? Well, at the end of the day, when we're playing Tempo Reanimator after bans, we kind of don't want to win because we don't actually want this deck to be really good in the format. Alright, there is a Devourer. There is a Welder. I don't think I Brainstorm for Velocity, although if we hit into Brazen Borrower, I think it's really important that we just have to go through this now. I think that's correct because of Brazen Borrower being one of our outs. This Swamp isn't an out, right? Because our opponent can put it on either of these guys. So I guess we put back the Wasteland and the Brainstorm here. We need to find a Fatal Push off of this Ponder. Actually, no, that's not going to work still, is it? Actually, no, the Fatal Push is fine because we kill whichever one they pump up. And then we kill the next one the following turn. Okay, Ponder. We get to see one mystery card. Oh, sorry, 2 mystery cards, then we get to shuffle it. Reanimate. It works. It's real bad. Actually, does it work? This has got Summoning Sickness. This has got Summoning Sickness. We reanimate this. They exile it now and put the counters on here. And then we don't actually have a way of blocking it. So the reanimate doesn't work if our opponent's smart. And it certainly looks like they know what they're doing. Because they would just exile this in response and have a big guy. There's an any order in shuffle. We need to find a Fatal Push. Oh, we found the Fatal Push. That's kind of a big deal. Let's plus the Tamiyo. Interesting they're doing this now. Okay. Does this mean they have a way of putting another creature in the graveyard so they can make both of their guys pumped? Because that would beat us here. We're so close to popping this Tamiyo art, which will hopefully give us all the resources, but we don't have any forces in. We do have a bunch of removal. If we can bounce the Blood Moon, we can have some action. Oh, Painter's Servant. This is going to give them Red Blast. So if we kill this, they Agatha's Soul Cauldron a counter on here. I think they got us coming and going here, team. Maybe if they attack one at Tamiyo, maybe they won't attack with the Welder. They got one card in hand. If it's Pyroblast, we're dead regardless. We need our opponent to just attack with the Goblin Engineer. And then we can Fatal Push this. Next turn, we can bring back the Fatal Push. Fatal Push something. And hope for the best. They're going to name black here for Snuff Out, perhaps. They did name black. Don't attack us with both creatures. Oh, they didn't attack us with both creatures. That's big news. Enormous news. They need to do the pumping first. We get a look at how they've sideboarded. They also get to strip out a bunch of stuff from their deck, which might make it harder for them to win if they remove all their grindstones. If they'd have attacked with Welder here, then we can't win. Okay, 2 grindstones down. There might not be any more grindstones in their deck. We're about to draw half of our deck here. Okay, so they're Pyroblasting the Tamiyo. We don't get to draw half of our deck. And we are in the exact same position we were in for next turn as well. Okay, we need a little bit of help here. Collector Ouphe. You're not exactly what we really need here, are you? Okay, let's Brainstorm. See if we can get like another Fatal Push from the top rope. No. Let's get rid of Worldly Tutor, and we have a lot of uncastables. So we play the Barrowgoyf and hope they make a mistake, or hope they don't have enough mana value in their deck to kill us. We should be stone cold dead to this though. They did name black on the Painted Servant to play around Snuff Out. That wasn't what we had. But we've bought ourselves an additional turn. So this is going to exile the creature and put a counter on the Painted Servant or the Welder. Then they untap, and then they do this again, put the counter on the other one, attack with both, and then they can pump them until we die. Yeah, this Blood Moon actually kind of cleaned our clock a little bit here. Block this one. They should have enough mana value of stuff to pump their Welder here. They might not pump it enough. If they make a mistake, they might pump it to our life total and forget about our lifelink, because they need to pump it to 22 here. That's our out. It's not really a great out. And then we can draw Brazen Borrower, then deploy the Collector Ouphe, shut off the Soul Cauldron, and maybe do something else. They are running a little bit short of cards here. They've got a bunch of Fable the Mirror Breakers in there for sure. Right, so we're at 21. They've gone to 25, so this is game over. GG's opponent. Our opponent's just milled over the whole deck then just to show us. Okay, so we finished 4-1, which is a very good record. Now, a lot of the games we were scrapping for, you know, 2-1s all the way down. That last round definitely didn't really work as we would have liked it to. But let's talk about this list. So, what we were doing was obviously quite powerful, but the amount of hoops we had to jump through. So, Worldly Tutor is so much worse than Entomb. Like, having to Worldly Tutor in order to then set it up with an Undercity Sewers or Hedge Maze. We also dilute our mana base, so we're playing an additional colour, which does come up, especially if you're trying to cast your Dauthi Voidwalkers out the sideboard. Hedge Maze can completely stop that from happening. Generous Ent only being able to get you certain pieces is really awkward as well. So it did feel like we were doing a powerful thing here. Our deck did seem pretty good for a lot of rounds, but it was very, very tight on our victories. This felt like we were doing something that should be Legacy power level. I think this is a perfectly viable deck in Legacy. I do think Tamiyo is too strong for Legacy, but we'll see how that prevails over the next couple of months. But I think what we're doing here feels appropriate. Now, sure, we can just get the high rolls where we just, you know, manage to luck sack our way into just getting like Atraxa super early, like turn 2 or whatever. But that's so much more difficult to do now. The amount of like super top end hands are a lot smaller with this list. And we're not running Animate Dead because we've got this Fanatic, which pairs well with the Worldly Tutor. So it does feel like this deck is probably on par for something you can play in Legacy. There's lots of ways to attack this. The mana base being weaker, that came back to bite us in that final round a little bit. If we were playing just blue-black, then we could probably fetch our basics a little bit more readily, knowing that we're going to be able to deploy our spells. We could have gone and got a Swamp straight away and not played that Ponder. But I think we were right to try and get the Dauthi Voidwalker down and shut down some of their graveyard shenanigans, things like Phyrexian Devourer combo, for example. The sideboard certainly had the tools I wanted in. The Dauthi Voidwalker is a little trickier to cast than I would like, but if you want to have a pivot plan with creatures you can beat down, I think having the Dauthi Voidwalker does make some sense. But it does feel a lot worse in this build than it did in the classic blue-black one that just got sort of banned up from losing Entomb. I really like the deck building on this one, having, you know, your Generous Ents, which can kind of be a thing that you can reanimate and is all well and good. And we've also got some really cool stuff we can do with Worldly Tutor, but the hoops are difficult to jump through, which is what I think it should be. Like, we're having to dedicate a similar amount of slots to the old blue-black Reanimator deck. So we've got our 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 if we include the Fanatic. So we've kind of got the same amount of package. We've got some Generous Ents, which I guess is part of the package as well. So this is kind of like a 13-card package. So it's a slightly bigger package than it was before Entomb was banned. But the hoops we have to go through to make Worldly Tutor into Entomb are significantly worse. It's much harder to get this to work. However, if your opponent is messing up your graveyard, Worldly Tutor does look better in that situation because you can just put like a 2-mana 4/4 lifelink on top of your deck, or out of the board just go and get Barrowgoyf, which is something we did. So it's not 100% strictly worse, it's just like 90% strictly worse in those scenarios. There are scenarios where having a Worldly Tutor will be better than having an Entomb, but I think on the whole it's going to be a lot worse. I think this deck is pretty sweet. Maybe we need to think about the Dauthi Voidwalkers, and if we want to have 3 of these, maybe one of them could be a Nile Spellbomb or something, just so it's something that's a little bit easier to cast. All in all, this deck looks pretty good. It looks a lot more fun to play with and against. I have actually played against this deck as well, but I think it's a lot more fun to play with and against than the old blue-black Reanimator deck, because it's a lot of work to get this going. You're not just like, oh, okay, if they have Entomb, we're basically dead. It's, oh, okay, they have to line up their fetch land plus Worldly Tutor, or their Surveil land plus Worldly Tutor. So it's a 2-card combo just to get it in the graveyard. Then they need the other card as well. So it makes it into a 3-card combo instead of a 2-card combo, which is almost like a 1-card combo in some ways, because you could just Entomb and then later on in the game you'd be fine and you can just use it as a shuffle and things. So I like the deck building here, and I quite enjoyed playing this deck. I don't think we have to all rush out and be terrified of this deck existing, but it's definitely something to keep your eye upon. There's probably going to be some improvements to a list that looks like this. The other blue-black list I've seen is running a lot of monsters. It's running Careful Study, because that alongside Brainstorm can flip your Tamiyo on your turn. And it's running more Animate Dead, so it's like got Reanimate, Animate Dead, Careful Study, and then more monsters. And it doesn't really have space for any of the tempo threats, so it doesn't have like the Murktide Regent or the Brazen Borrower. It still has the counter magic, but the only actual way it can really win the game is with the big monsters. And that's sort of the other tempo build I've seen, which is a little bit less tempo-y because it doesn't have the gears of Murktide Regent and Brazen Borrower. Also, Brazen Borrower is a nice thing to be able to tutor for off of this Worldly Tutor. Unfortunately, we couldn't quite make that happen this time around. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this one and weren't too worried by the presence of this existing. And if you stuck it out this long to watch this video, please think about joining my Patreon. You can just give me a couple of dollars a month to show your appreciation if you've got the spare money. And I do appreciate it. Or you can join the YouTube membership for just $1 a month and see my videos early. It all helps. And maybe one day I'll be getting minimum wage for making all this content. Who knows? All right. Thank you so much for watching. Like, subscribe, do all the good stuff, and goodbye. If you'd like to support me in the channel, please check out my Patreon. It has a free guide to budget turbo depths as well as 3 tiers of support. A low cost one that enters you into my monthly raffle for a free donation deck on the channel, a mid-tier subscription that gives you access to my detailed turbo depths guide that is updated every month as well as regular articles, and lastly the higher tier gives you all of the above as well as a monthly donation deck for my channel. If you're interested in supporting the channel this way, please check out the link in the description.